Now, an army is a team. It lives, eats, sleeps, fights as a team. This individuality stuff is a bunch of crap.
In mid-April, as the Tunisian campaign neared its end, Lieutenant General George S. Patton Jr. left 2nd Corps in Major General Bradley's hands, and returned to French Morocco to take part in planning for the Sicily operation, codenamed Husky. In July 1943, the Western Allied Army command structure had the American General Dwight Eisenhower as the Commander-in-Chief of Operation Husky. Below him was the British Deputy Commander-in-Chief, General Sir Harold Alexander, who headed up the 15th Army Group. The 15th Army Group contained two armies, the U.S. 7th Army, under Lieutenant General George Patton, and the British 8th Army, under General Bernard Montgomery. Lieutenant General Omar Bradley commanded the U.S. 2nd Corps. Bradley had been promoted to Lieutenant General, 3 stars, in June 1943. Even though Bradley was the same rank as Patton, he was under his command. During the planning stage for Operation Husky, American officers expected to go on the offensive in Sicily. They were initially scheduled to land on Sicily's northern coast and capture the capital of Palermo. However, British General Montgomery wanted a less dispersed landing in the south of the island, and, in the end, his plan won out. At this point, the British Army had been at war with the Germans for almost 4 years. They had fought the German army in France, Crete, Greece, North Africa, among other places. The United States had entered the war in late 1941, but had not really come to grips with the Germans until relatively recently. From what the British had seen in North Africa, they were skeptical of the fighting ability of the American soldier. One little-known historical fact is that Operation Husky was plagued with problems. The Allies agreed that the goal of the invasion was to land in the south, attack the Germans and Italians and head for Messina. Certain roads were designated to each army. The Americans were to advance inland, while the British went directly for Messina on the shortest route, which was on the east coast of Sicily. To General Alexander, it was clear that the British 8th Army would have the glory of capturing the more obviously attractive objectives of Syracuse, Catania, and Messina. This would also preclude the U.S. Army from getting to Messina at all, or at least not before the British Army. For the Americans, Messina wasn't just a distant goal. It wasn't a goal at all. General Alexander followed the British concept of making contact with the enemy, and then reacting accordingly. After the beach landings, there was no real plan, other than the British capturing Messina. There was very little battle coordination with the Americans. There was almost no ground coordination with the Allied air forces, or navies. This was an utter strategic failure, and the repercussions would be felt months later when the Allies fought in Italy. As the Allied armada steamed toward the island, a fierce 40-mile-per-hour gale whipped up the seas, seriously endangering some of the smaller craft. Even so, on July 10, the Allies invaded Sicily before sunrise, launching a massive amphibious assault on the southern shores of the island. For the next 3 days, it involved more than 3,000 ships, landing over 150,000 ground troops, and covered by more than 4,000 aircraft. It was the largest amphibious operation conducted in World War II, with over 7 assault divisions. Landing in conjunction with Patton's 7th Army at Gela, Montgomery's 8th Army came ashore in the southeast corner of the island. The beaches of Gela were defended by the Italian 18th Coastal Brigade, while the town itself was defended with barbed wire, pillboxes, and anti-tank weapons, manned by the Italian 429th Coastal Battalion. The beaches on either side of Gela were mined, covered by machine guns, and had committed artillery battalions to support the defenders. According to the invasion plan, paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division's 505th and 504th Parachute Regiments, under the command of Colonel James Gavin, would seize the high ground north of the 1st Division's beachheads. As it happened, many of the paratroopers missed their drop zones, and they were scattered to the winds. The first armor to reach the shores of Jalaw were from the 67th Armored Regiment. However, the regiment's Sherman tanks became stuck in the soft sand of the beachhead, but eventually freed themselves to join the fight against German armored units that descended on the battlefield. The 2nd Armored, working closely with the 1st Infantry Division and the Rangers, held off a dangerous and massive German and Italian counterattack on July 11. With reinforcements pouring in, and the Axis counterattack stopped and reversed, Bradley's 2nd Corps had advanced inland to within 1,000 yards of Highway 124 by July 13. This was a major transport road that cut east to west across the center of the island. Meanwhile, entrenched German troops had blunted Montgomery's advance up the island's east coast, hemming 8th Army in on the plain between towering Mount Etna and the sea. In a sudden change of plan, Montgomery decided to send a flanking force west around Mount Etna. To do so he needed Highway 124. This frustrated Patton and Bradley. They were promised certain roads for their advance, but Monty got his way all the time. Patton pondered what to do about it. He realized that if he left it up to the British, then they would get all the glory, and at the end of the campaign, the Americans' efforts would be seen as a sideshow. The prestige and honor of the United States Army was at stake. He concocted a plan to trick the British. The next day, Patton and Major General Lucien Truscott, who commanded the 3rd Infantry Division, discussed a westward reconnaissance in force. Patton had his eyes set on Palermo, and, ultimately, Messina. On July 17, Patton flew to Tunisia to meet General Alexander. He slyly secured authorization to drive north to split the Axis forces, and to clear out remaining resistance in the west. Alexander, perceiving nothing amiss, agreed, with the caveat that Patton's forces continue defending a crucial road network in the center of the island. "If I do what I am going to do," Patton confided to his diary, "there is no need of holding anything, but it's a mean man who won't promise. So I did." Patton had his foot in the door, and he meant to swing it wide open. Patton created a provisional corps under the command of Major General Jeffrey Keyes, his deputy commander, and sent it northwest towards Palermo while Bradley's 2nd Corps set out for the north coast, knifing across the island's center through tough German defenders. Facing light resistance from dispirited Italian troops, Keyes' troops moved so fast that often the 88mm guns that they captured were pointed in the wrong direction. On July 22, Truscott's division entered Palermo after covering an astonishing 100 miles in just 72 hours. Wild celebrations and joyous Sicilians greeted the Americans. Support for Mussolini was nowhere to be seen. The next day, the 45th Division of Bradley's 2nd Corps reached the coast, 25 miles to the east. Until he took matters into his own hands, Patton wrote in his diary, Monty was trying to command both armies, and getting away with it. While Keyes and Bradley had raced across Sicily, Montgomery's 8th Army had become completely bogged down in the east. German troops had continued to hold Montgomery at bay, while his circling movement west around Mount Etna proceeded slowly. With 7th Army now poised, ready to strike east, Montgomery realized that Patton was in the best position to take the city. By attacking east, Patton would relieve the pressure on 8th Army, and allow him to finally punch past the German front line. "This is a horse race, in which the prestige of the U.S. Army is at stake," Patton wrote. "We must take Messina before the British." Patton urged his officers to use their best efforts to win the race. Montgomery made little of this race. But to Patton it became a personal crusade to win acclaim and respect for his much maligned troops. British soldiers and officers undoubtedly wanted to beat the Americans into Messina. Patton definitely hyped the contest. On July 25, King Victor Emmanuel III, supported by leading Italian political figures, deposed dictator Benito Mussolini, and Italy began to negotiate peace terms with the Allies. Italy would later pull out of the Axis in September. As German commanders planned to evacuate Sicily, Patton and Montgomery began squeezing Axis defenders into the island's northeast corner. Eighth Army continued to probe German defenses while Canadian and British troops continued around Mount Etna's western slope. To the north, the 1st, and newly arrived 9th American Divisions advanced east from the island's rugged center, while the 3rd Division attacked down the North Coast Road. Patton wrote in his diary, "The mountains are the worst I have ever seen. It is a miracle that our men can get through them, but we must keep up a steady pressure. The enemy simply can't stand it, besides we must beat the 8th Army to Messina." As the final phase of the campaign heated up, Patton drove his men to push as hard as they could. Fighting a steady rearguard action, German army units crept back from their narrowing front toward the beaches of the Straits of Messina. There, German and Italian ships waited to ferry troops and equipment across the 2-mile passage to the Italian mainland. In an effort to bypass enemy positions, and speed up his advance, Patton authorized 2 amphibious landings along the north coast. Americans swept ashore virtually unopposed behind German lines. At the same time, troops from Truscott's 3rd Division launched an attack on the high ridges inland, and took 1,500 prisoners, bringing 7th Army 12 miles closer to Messina. Early on August 11, elements of the 30th Infantry Regiment went ashore 12 miles behind the German front. They had leapfrogged too far this time. The Americans were quickly pinned down on a hill just above town. Nearly 30 hours passed before follow-on troops could relieve them. On August 13, American troops captured Randazzo. To the south, British and Canadian troops forced the Germans from the slopes of Mount Etna. Axis forces flooded toward Messina. Around 10 p.m. on August 16, elements of Truscott's 3rd Division entered bomb-scarred Messina. Patton immediately notified Eisenhower and Alexander, and called Bradley to tell him we would enter Messina in the morning, at 1000 hours. Early the next morning, as the last of the Axis troops slipped off the island, Patton, in his command car, followed by his officers, and a host of reporters, led a procession of army vehicles into Messina, chased all the way by exploding shells fired by Axis guns on the Italian mainland. At about 10:30 a.m., Patton pulled into the city square. When British commandos reached the city, the Americans were already there. Patton would soon find that his worst enemy wasn't the Germans, but himself. If you would like to see more videos like this, then check out my channel. Here are 2 other videos you may enjoy. Oh, and don't forget to click the subscribe button and ring the bell to get notifications of great future content.
If you liked what you see, hit the subscribe button or share. Thank you. This has been EmersusTech.